Welcome back to this.
Whoa, wait.
I thought we were going to do it together.
You didn't tell me. We didn't clear this.
Yeah.
I didn't get a memo.
I didn't clear this?
Yeah, you have to clear it with
There's
me.
a security clearance.
Yes.
Like, oh, sorry, my
you
bad.
have to send me an email.
Oh, okay. I sent you a Skype message.
Oh, okay. Shit. You know what? That's on me then.
And then there'll be a beep edit. It'll be perfect.
I love it. Hey, welcome back, everyone. It's the Junk Monkeys podcast, your bi-weekly connection through conversation.
Whoa,
okay?
that's been something Randy's been talking about for a bit now.
Been trying to incorporate
Work
that.
Get that in there.
I haven't been in the podcast booth for a little while.
It's been a hot and spicy minute.
Yeah. And same for you, actually, because you hadn't been on for the survival episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Randy McLeod. I'm joined by my good friend, Daniel Mosionier.
Hello.
Hi.
I wasn't talking to you.
Okay, my bad. You want to go fucking message me on Skype, all right?
Maybe I will.
So, we're doing a fan favorite. Actually, it did okay.
It was all right.
It was okay.
It did better than a number of episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And you know what? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
We're doing part 2 to our creative showcase.
The creative showcase.
So yeah, we're gonna
showcase creativity.
Absolutely. We're gonna showcase Dan's music.
Yeah.
We're gonna showcase Reading with Rand is what I'm calling it.
What the hell was that? Someone just died?
I don't know. I think they're okay. So yeah, we're gonna be running the creative showcase part 2 today.
Yes, sir.
Dan's gonna be playing some of his fantastic music. I'm gonna be doing a little bit of Reading with Rand.
Randy's gonna be reading some of his fantastic writing.
Oh, thank you.
I almost did it backwards. Gonna be writing some of your fantastic reading. You could do that.
Yeah, I could. You know what? I'll. It's just quiet as I'm like writing, and I'm like, fuck. What do I do here?
How do you spell receiving? The E before the I, except after P.
That's most of my degree. Anyway, so please stick around for this episode of the Junk Monkeys podcast.
So everyone just and big thumbs down.
Big doo-doo.
So no one plays it anymore.
Welcome back, everybody.
Well, welcome back, everybody.
I am Randy McLeod. I'm excited to be back in the booth.
It's been a while.
Yeah, we missed our last episode because school, term papers, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Countless things.
Yes, lots of things.
Lots of things happening. But we're back, and I'm excited to be back in the booth, and I'm excited to get to our fantastic little showcase today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Dan.
What's up?
Quick quiz question for you.
Yeah.
How long ago?
Study.
How long ago did we do our last creative showcase?
4 months.
11.
What? No.
11 months
Wrong.
ago.
Insert extremely loud incorrect buzzer.
Yeah. No, it was basically a year ago that we did this. So
That's
it's almost as if
crazy.
we're on a schedule and like we're like, I feel like we need to showcase our stuff again.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like the lunar cycle.
Remember when we were like, yeah, let's do one of these again real soon, and then we just never did.
Yeah.
I'm always writing. I'm always writing new stuff.
Well, I'm not actually, and I think we're going to talk
what
about
the
that a
heck
little
is
bit. We'll talk about how like my writing process has been a little different in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll get into that. But Dan, I wanted to start, since we did our last episode, which please go check out. It was a great episode.
Please.
But I want to start with your music first, because I feel like the way we're going to structure this episode is my piece is longer. Like it's
a big long piece of writing.
Big old piece of writing.
Big old
writing
piece of
takes
really,
a while
really good
to read.
writing.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Well, I've read it. It's fantastic.
Oh, stop.
I don't remember specifically which one it is, but I know I've read Strugglers.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 thumbs up.
I love how you did that, and then you were like, oh, wait, I need to let the audience know that I need to put 2 thumbs up.
I just did it and stayed quiet. Yeah. What's he going to say?
Did he put 2 thumbs down?
I read it and it sucked. No.
But yeah, last time we did, I think we started with my story, and then we did 2 pieces of your music. And so to kind of balance it a little bit better this time, we'll do your piece of music, we'll do my story, and then we'll do another piece of your music to close out the show.
I think that's a great way to do it.
Fantastic.
It's like a bell curve. It's
yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah, you remember, you know what? I was in class the other day, and somebody brought up asymptotes. You remember those?
I remember the term.
Yeah. No, I think it was like pre-cal or something, or like, no, it was probably applied.
I was going to say, I didn't take pre-calc or applied.
One of those graph things where it's just like a solid line going vertical. Anyway, it doesn't matter about that. Nothing about that matters anymore. What matters
Well,
is,
for us.
Yeah.
For some people, it's really important.
No.
Okay.
No.
Physicists now out of
They
a
don't need
job.
it. Don't need it.
Engineers at Boeing stumped.
Where they're doing a little. They're not doing so hot.
They've been stumped for a while.
Yeah, they should have. These safety concerns are really tricky. It really stumped on these.
The Walter White, like the Breaking Bad, like plane crash thing.
Oh no!
Ad for Boeing.
Oh no!
That's probably been. That
Oh,
joke's
it's
probably
definitely
been
been
a
done.
million times.
Yeah. Daniel,
Yes.
what are you playing for us today?
I got this one track. It's called Octopus Music.
I'd rather you didn't play that one.
No, that's a goofy track I wrote for with a friend a little while ago.
It's actually it's very fun to listen to, but at the same time.
But in the way where you're like, wow, this is really fucking bad. Well, let's not like.
Sure. Okay.
It was written with the intent of being bad.
Yes.
I was just like, this is something octopuses would listen to. No, I have. Man, there's two I'm thinking of. There's some wacky names in here.
Yeah, anytime you tell me a name of one of your songs, it's like, oh yeah, this one is called Grocery Store Clerk.
Well,
like,
some names are like, well, hold on.
Oh, some of them are gorgeous. Like
there's there's Octopus Music. There's Tasty Korean Food Theme Song.
Mm-hmm.
I write a lot of theme songs.
Okay.
What?
No.
There's New Haircut theme song right there.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. There's Funk-a-Song.
I like Funk-a-Song. That's a good
Funk-a-Song.
title.
There's my new store that sells exclusively hot sauce.
Okay.
There's On God. What are you laughing
What
at?
do you mean, what am I laughing at?
There's We're Going for Lunch Today, but I am up late making this song, so after I am done, I need to go to bed. That's the whole thing. It's like, if you look right here, it's super duper long.
You know, I was wondering that. Of, like, what point does it get cut off? And then you have to, like,
No,
remember.
I have my name category extended as far as it can go.
Oh, yeah,
I turn
because
off,
you need to.
I turn off all the other sorting modifiers, and it's just name.
Right.
And then some of them still get cut off, like that one. So there's me when I go to the party that I didn't want to go to. No, me when the party that I didn't want to go to gets canceled.
Oh, okay.
That was 2 nights ago,
Mm-hmm.
and an event I was going to go to got canceled. And I didn't want to go in the first place, and I was happy, so I wrote it was like
a celebration
yeah,
song.
yeah. I was like, nice, I can stay home and write music.
Let's go.
I think I'll probably play Unyielding Love, or either Unyielding Love or When Love Is Your Only Motivation. Both about love.
Cool.
I think I'll do When Love Is Your Only Motivation. It's actually named. I mean, this is embarrassing. It's actually named after a really, really, really old fan fiction.
Okay.
On fanfiction.net.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who don't know, which is most of you, probably you too, I was a huge, huge fan fiction kid.
Okay.
I wrote it. I lived and breathed fan fiction when I was younger.
Yeah.
So this is from an old fan fiction called When Love Is Your Only Motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was writing this piece of music, and I was in my mind as I was writing it, because I don't come up with names before I have a piece like essentially finished or close to finished, or at least before I have the main melody and theme and motif, and before the piece has like structure.
Yeah.
Because then I know what the piece is about.
Mm-hmm.
But I was writing this, and I was like, this is clearly about love and interpersonality and friendship and happy things, and love was the main one. And it just made me think about things in my life that have worked to define me as a person, as a creative, just as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really silly to say, but a lot of like what helped me be me when I was younger were these silly stories and literary worlds that I could escape to.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this piece of music called When Love Is Your Only Motivation. And if there is nothing else to go over, I can play it.
Now, would you like me to interject within the song, or would you like to just do a clean run through of the song and then we can talk about it afterwards?
I think we should do a clean run through. It's only 1:56.
Great.
So it's not very long.
Okay.
You'll get the gist of it pretty quick.
Sweet.
But we'll do a blind listen through first, and then I'll play it again, but like quieter, and we can discuss it.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay, I'm not as nervous as I was the first time. I'm not really nervous at all now.
That's awesome.
This is When Love Is Your Only Motivation. Dat the song.
Daniel,
What?
you have a knack for.
I don't have that. Game sucks.
Haha. Let me pay you a compliment, you goof.
It's so awkward being paid compliments.
No, I know, right?
You
It's
know what
worse.
I mean?
I hate it.
It sucks.
Anytime you said like, "Oh yeah, it's wonderful writing," I'm like, "Stop it."
No, yeah, and when you're
It's
like
the
saying,
worst.
I'm like, no.
No, but like,
I can't hear you.
if I may,
Yes.
you have a knack for finding the beauty in music, and like I feel like with you pair together like the strings and the and the would you call it vocals or what would you call that? Kind of
choir.
Like, yeah,
It's-
choir.
It is vocals.
That's a
but
great
it's
way.
choir.
Yeah.
Choral sound.
Yeah, it's very choral. Save the choral.
I'm so proud of that short.
It's so good.
I gotta save the choral, bro.
I gotta save the choral. No, I the way that you meld the two is just like I keep using the word hauntingly lately for some reason, but like it's almost like hauntingly beautiful.
Hauntingly can be good.
Yeah,
There's-
absolutely.
there's
It's
no-
definitely a positive
Yeah,
connotation.
there's. I was gonna say there's no like meaning to that word that means good or bad.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly. So I don't know. Talk me through it, man. Like, first of all, when was this piece created? You talked about this back, like it was inspired by back when you were younger, or was it?
Largely, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I started writing it, and here I'll play it again. I'll play it quietly.
Yeah, you bet.
It started with this sound, this stringy, airy, ambient sound, and continued to evolve. The most difficult thing with writing music like this is finding the chord structure.
Yeah.
And it just, this is pretty simple in terms of what the music is. It's strings with a really, really big reverb patch. So it's a lot of reverb. There's something called dry and wet sounds with reverb.
Okay.
And wet sound is the sound of the reverb. Dry sound is your source.
Right.
So if I was talking and you applied reverb on me, my original talking in the software would be the dry sound, and then the wet is the sound of the reverberation that you add digitally.
Okay.
So you can choose like how much wet and how much dry you want. So if you have 100% dry and 0 wet, then you'll have no reverb.
Right.
And if you have 100% wet and 0 dry, you'll have just the sound of the reverb without the sound of the original source.
Huh.
So this is a lot of big, wide strings, like a very wide like range of octaves, and the choir, and mostly the wet sound of the reverb with not much dry. It's in there, but it's mostly the sound of the reverb.
Yeah, it's almost like I want to use the word ethereal. Like it feels very ethereal.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. That honestly, like, it amazes me that the amount of knowledge you have about music, because like I I'd never known that there was like wet and dry sounds when it comes to reverb and when it comes to stuff like that.
That's more of like a production thing.
Sure.
Like, because that applies to things other than music too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if you were just playing in an orchestra, where would that come in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So.
But no, it's fascinating that I don't know, like you were talking about the like naming process.
Yes.
Because I have that thing too where I don't know a name for something until I actually know what I'm doing. Like my I'm really lacking on words right now. When I'm writing an essay, I don't
This is a difficult thing to describe.
Yeah. When I'm writing an essay, I don't write my intro paragraph until like maybe halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way through it.
I totally get that because
Yeah.
I start writing. If I have an idea for a thing, I'll start writing it, and I won't write the intro.
Exactly.
Or rather, I'll write maybe a placeholder, maybe a little bit of like a couple of like bullet points about how the intro is going to go, so I don't forget.
It's almost like,
But yeah, I don't write the intro either.
yeah, it's almost like a mood board, if that makes sense.
Kinda,
like,
yeah. Just put this down so I don't forget.
Yeah.
Write the dialogue. Write the idea that I actually want to have.
Yeah.
Then go back and like flesh it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
so
that.
when it comes to music though, like I can imagine like it's with the two, what'd you say, a minute 57 or minute?
Minute 56. You're off by 1 second.
Damn it.
Very close.
But like, A, how long does that take you to make? And B, when do you know it's done?
That's a very good question. So here's the thing about me writing music. I very rarely finish a piece in a session. This piece is not done. And actually, well, let me go back to your first question first, which was what? Sorry.
How long does it take to make 2 minutes of music?
Right. This was probably about, it's probably not as long as you think. I would say probably an hour and a half of like nose to the grindstone, because there are pieces where I kind of just am writing for fun. And then there's pieces where, you can probably relate to this, where I get a creative spark.
Yeah.
And I have to write. It's like a specter is controlling my hands.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not even doing this. This is like,
You're not at the wheel anymore.
this is a personification of my own creativity doing this. Yeah. It's just, you're on autopilot.
That's so cool.
Do you have the same thing where when you get a really strong creative spark, you don't even have to think about what you're writing. You just know what to write?
Sometimes I have a moment in which I get that spark of like an idea, not necessarily like the exact words that I need. Like if I'm sitting down and I'm like, okay, I'm here to write.
Yeah.
A lot of the times what'll happen is when I'm trying to fall asleep, because I can never fucking fall asleep, I'll start thinking about the story, and I'll start thinking about like, I remember one of my pieces, Dishes. I
love Dishes.
What was fascinating, what was great about that story was that it was broken up into a very different structure than what I'm usually, which is like at 10 years old, and then at 20 years old, and at 30 years old.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I had to come up with different stories that linked the character to the previous stories. Like, they were basically like bite-sized stories about a person's life. But I didn't know exactly what key moment in that decade I was going to talk about in that story.
Yeah.
And so I would do a section, and then I would go to bed and try to sleep, and I can't sleep. And I'm like, okay, so what if Joe did this? And then I'm like, okay, I'll explore that tomorrow, and then hopefully I remember it by tomorrow. And then I've started to have to like write down things when I'm like in bed, like and so that I don't forget them, because there have been times where I'll go to the computer the next day, I'm like, oh shit.
I have a very similar thing where if I get like a really strong burst of inspiration and I'm not at my computer, or I'll pull out my phone and I'll just turn on my video and I'll set it on the table so it's a black screen.
Yeah.
But if I've got my guitar, I'll play it. If I'm just out and about, I'll hum it.
Yeah.
I'll sing the words. And then it's a record, and I can come back later, just like how you write down your ideas. I do that musically.
Yeah, that's
very helpful.
That's so fascinating, because I never realized that was a thing that you could do, or like obviously you can do it, but like I've never thought to think like to do that in terms of audio, in terms of like musical cues or musical melodies and stuff like that, right? Like with words, it's just words.
It's just
right?
words on the table. On the table.
I
guess you could write it on the table.
Yeah, I guess you'd have to wash it off later, but yeah, I always find it like. The creative process is so different for every single person. And I think we talked about this quite a bit on the last one. And actually, like, I think Brad asked the other day, like, how do you guys like? What happens when you just like hit that creative spark, or like how do you wrangle that beast of creativity? I'm like, well, you don't try to like force it into a chokehold.
No,
like,
you let go.
Yeah,
you let go, and you let your hands work.
Yeah,
because they'll just go on your own. I will say, when I get like big bursts of creative inspiration, I don't even have to, in a lot of cases, well, those cases specifically with really, really strong bursts of inspiration, I don't even have to think about what sound I want to put down. I hear it, and I'm like, okay, string, and then we need a choir here, and then it switches to pizzicato, and then it's just a flow of idea after idea after idea without a pause. And as you know, that's great, but also, holy shit, does that tire you out?
Yeah,
so fast.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to show you really quick. You were talking about writing things down. I was talking about like recording musical ideas.
Yeah.
It was 2 a.m, and I'm trying to sleep, and I had a really a burst of creative inspiration for music, and I was like, I really want to. It wasn't for composing. It was for my guitar.
Yeah.
But I was like, I really want this idea, but like I'm trying to sleep. So I got up. I got out my guitar. I set my phone on my table. I sat up, and I hit the record button. So just for the sake of example,
yeah, totally.
I'm showing Randy my phone right now. This is the video I took. It's just black. But if I play the audio,
oh, that's so sick.
And it's just the idea I had.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more than this. It's 3 chords. But
you played this?
Yes.
Dude, you're so talented, man.
It's literally not that complicated.
No, but it is though.
But yeah, so So that was the same idea where the same way you have to like, I got a really good idea, but I write it down and then tomorrow I'll work on it.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with music sometimes. Now doing it with my guitar is a bit of a rarity.
Okay.
I only have like one or two of those.
Yeah.
But man, when they happen, it's super useful.
Oh, absolutely.
I enjoy that riff and I'm going to use it in a future song. And I played it in the car the other day.
Yeah.
Because the car is a little bit less quality, but like you're in a car. And I played it and I was like, this could just be the start of an indie song.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, I should work on this.
Yeah, you should have a little experiment sometime where you're driving with somebody and you start playing it and they're like, oh shit, what is this?
This is really good, yeah.
Yeah.
I did that to my dad once. I played a piece of music and one of my orchestral pieces, and I was like, do you know who this is? And he went, well, it sounds kind of like classical. Is this Mozart? And I went, okay, well.
Oh, wow.
I think he was pulling my leg.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was like, shut the hell up.
Yeah, he's just like, Bach, perhaps?
So you were asking about how I know when a piece is done?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. And it's actually one of, like, I don't know if you remember Wet Cement, but there's a section in that story in which the restaurant gets finished, and he's like, "How do you know how to finish something?" Yeah, and that was just me projecting onto the page,
right.
like my problem with like finishing this short story sequence.
That's really interesting.
And before you jump in, before I stop interrupting you,
no.
I was listening to a podcast today, and it was with Nikki Jakey from YouTube, just a YouTuber, sits on a yoga ball. He's very funny. Anyway, he was talking about, he said a quote that has really stuck with me all day, and it was basically like, perfection is the enemy of done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, damn, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, please.
I was just going to say, like, for example, this piece, it's not done. I have ideas as to how I might want to continue it. I have ideas as to how I might want to finish it, but here's my take. I don't really go into writing pieces of music with the intent of finishing them. Okay. Because the difference being that I don't write music to make money, or I don't write it for a professional ordeal. Well, I used to, but not anymore. Right. I just read Skittle copies. I write music to express my creativity. I write music to express what I can't express with words. Mm-hmm. I write music because I have to. And putting a self-imposed rule of, oh, I need this music to be done, almost feels disingenuous to myself, because none of these songs, they're just expressions of how essentially my soul feels in that moment. Sure. And I don't know, it just feels more open-ended. It's quite rare for me to finish a song. Yeah. The only songs that are finished are like the ones on my YouTube and stuff. Yeah. But there's 640 pieces of music here, and they're all different. Mm. And I would honestly say probably 20 of them are done. Huh. And like all of them could be continued and worked on and finished, but I'm always creating new things. Yeah. I'm always moving forward. Yeah. And there's always a progression of not only skill, but expressiveness. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't really know what I'm saying. No. You're bringing up a really great point in that, like, the idea of done doesn't really have to apply to music or writing or anything really. Yeah. Like a journal entry doesn't have to be complete. No. It can just be, this is what I'm thinking right now, and therefore it's not a complete thought. If a journal entry is complete, you're done writing in the journal. Yeah, I feel like. Yeah, absolutely. It's always a continuous process. Yeah, it's always iterative. You know? Yes, very much so. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of these pieces, all of these pieces wouldn't exist. These 20 pieces wouldn't exist if the past 20 didn't. Yeah, which wouldn't exist if the past 20 didn't. And so, I was gonna say, I'm gonna start playing this music again, not from the beginning, but I was just gonna say, this is towards the end of the piece, and wait, let me skip ahead just a little bit. Right there. So the choir is sort of muted, but right here, not right here, right here, there's one specific voice that kind of stands out. Yeah, I hear it. Yeah. So that's me playing with the velocity of the notes, which is how hard, like on a piano, if you press the note softly, you get a soft note, and if you press the note hard, you get a
A sharp note.
A sharp note, yes. The same thing applies to sound libraries, like choirs and strings. And so with the choir, if I press really lightly, the choirists sing very softly. And if I press loud, they sing a lot harder. Sure, I guess.
Sure.
So I don't know. That specific note where that I assume lady is singing louder.
Yeah.
Right here. I feel like if I was going to continue this piece, which I probably won't, I would explore that as an option.
Yeah.
And maybe the strings maybe I'd take a couple octaves off the top of the strings and then just let the choir have more of the space, because the strings are the dominant force in this piece.
Yeah.
But maybe the next step would be to give the choir a bit more of the spotlight.
Okay.
Or maybe the thought of a solo cello always comes forward. And so it's not that this piece isn't done. Yeah. But I know how, if I wanted to, I could continue it. Mm-hmm. So
do you ever go back to old pieces and like take a listen to it
all the time?
But do you go back and listen to it and be like, man, I could fix her, like not even fix, but like, how do I want to continue working on this.
Yes, actually, I have a quick example if you want.
Yeah, please.
So
it's called octopus music.
I have a piece I wrote a long time ago, I think back in 2019. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's called Here's to Eternity.
Okay.
So just really quick, this is what the original piece sounds like. We won't listen to all of it.
Sure.
It's a piano piece. Mm-hmm. It's very simple, but I think it's pretty cute. We'll just listen to a few more seconds, because here comes the melody. Randy's doing a little dance. Like, it's fun.
Yeah.
I was obviously a lot more amateurish of a composer back then.
Sure.
Pause the music. Oh no, I full screened the media thing.
Oh,
whoops.
no.
We're good. So I was going through in 2023, because I can see the name here, going through old music, and I was listening to Here's to Eternity, and I was like, this is a really good idea. I should continue it. So I did. Here's the same piece, but 4 years later.
Oh, no way.
Immediately much more.
No way.
What do you mean, no way?
That's incredible.
Oh. And then the melody.
Yeah, man.
But now it's more of a complete piece.
Totally.
As opposed to, here, really quick, audience, I'll jump back to the original one. This is just a piano piece.
Yeah.
This is just a sketch. This is just an idea. But then you jump forward 4 years, and obviously I've grown a lot more as a composer.
Sure.
And this piece is a lot more complicated, the 2023 one, than the original one, because I've iterated on the original idea, like you said.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is yes. I don't think I fixed anything. I think I continued with an idea that was already good.
You iterated.
It just needed nurturing.
Yeah.
There's a number of pieces like that. There's a couple in here where there's 4 or 5 iterations, and I've done one in 2017 and 19 and 2023 and 2024. There's a song in here piece called March on Candlelight that is like 4 iterations deep.
That's so cool, man.
And the original one sounds like dog shit.
Yeah.
And the new one's so cool. So yeah,
polish a turd.
Absolutely. I do that all the time.
That's so cool.
Yes.
And it's very interesting that like you kind of use lingo that I wouldn't associate with music, if that makes sense. Like, this is a sketch. Like, I never think of that for music.
I appreciate that. I would say that's probably just because like I said, I do music as a creative outlet as opposed to like a job. So, plus I feel like limiting yourself simply and only to specifically music terms is limiting.
Inaccessible for some people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it just sort of helps even the playing field and lets other people get a better appreciation of what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, thank you.
No, that's awesome. And I guess to wrap things up on this song is like, do you have any final thoughts on like that particular track, or is there anything about that track that like you listening to it now, you're like, yeah, there's something more here that I want to get back to? And yeah. Basically, any final thoughts on this track?
I don't know. I have this sort of issue where sometimes I wonder if I'm writing the same music over and over again, because a lot of my music is like this. Now, I'm confident enough in my own ability to say that this is a good piece of music, because I know it is. But and you seem to have related. Sometimes I'm just like, am I just writing the same thing over and over again? I don't know.
I have a nasty little habit of writing about death in a lot of my pieces, and I'm like, I'm just writing the same shit all over again. Like I'm doing the same thing, and I've definitely tried to like branch out away from that.
That's what I've been doing recently.
Yeah,
I've been experimenting with more electronic production, which you've heard a number of.
Yeah.
So like octopus music.
Of course.
No, that's a meme song.
Banger.
Thank you. Wait, really quick. Do you want to? No, we'll do that after.
Okay.
Okay. So do I have anything I would change or anything? Not really.
Okay.
It's every single one of these pieces of music is just a step in my musical journey, and they're all laid out, and I can look back on them one day. So they exist greater than their own worth because they exist not only as a piece of music, but as a breadcrumb trail for my musical journey and my skill as a composer and my overall emotion, really.
Yeah, they're almost like unintentional milestones of like.
I feel like they're intentional milestones.
Yeah, but like you didn't set out to make them as a milestone.
Right. Yeah. They exist. It's a very like complete trail too, because I write music like every day.
It's almost like evidence. It's like evidence of you being like it attacks imposter syndrome, in that like you look back and be like, no, wait, there's evidence that proves that I'm a good artist. You know, like
sometimes I go back and I'm like, I didn't write this. Yeah. But it's really good, and I'm like, no, I didn't.
There's no way.
I wrote this? What the fuck are you talking about?
I do that, but like the opposite. I'll go like back to my very, very old stuff, and I'll be like, ooh, Ram, we got better. That is good.
No, me too. But like I've been doing music. I've been doing this for like 6 or 7 years now. So like if I go back to 2017, it's like, wow, this sucks. Yeah. But if I go back 2 or 3 years, I'm like, there's some bangers in here.
Right? Yeah, I have that with writing too, where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I did write something good here. This was good.
Sometimes you got to pat yourself on the back. Yeah. And it's a hell of a lot.
It's very hard to do sometimes.
Well, I would say it's a lot easier to pat yourself on the back than it is to receive compliments.
Really?
I think so. Because like, I'll be honest, there are times where I'm like, yeah, I'm a good composer. I'm writing cool stuff. But then when like you pay me a compliment, I'm like,
stop.
Stop.
Yeah. No, I get that. Dan, that was awesome.
Thank you. We move on.
We're gonna move on right after a quick ad break from our sponsor,
Pierre's General Store.
Absolutely.
Closed on Wednesdays, but all the other days,
come on down.
Competing with Joja Mart.
Yeah, yep.
Been doing a Stardew playthrough recently.
Oh shit, that is from Stardew. I'm like, what the fuck are you referencing?
1.6 just came out.
Oh shit.
So it's a huge update, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Stardew's good.
Stardew's great.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Whoa. What?
No.
Who was on trial, Brad?
So before I came in here today, I was like, you know what? I got to refresh myself on the last time we did a creative showcase, and you know, see what that vibe was like, and make sure we don't have the exact same conversation over again. And so we started with my piece, Star Surfers, which if you haven't listened to, it's back on that first one.
You should go listen to it. It's real good.
It's basically like that was my 1,000 word story, in that like, hey, here's your constraint. You only have 1,000 words.
Yeah. I have the same thing with 10-minute challenges.
Oh, I like that.
Write a song in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's like
I have a bunch of them actually.
It's like a music jam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're hard.
So when I was listening back to it, I was genuinely cringing a little bit, because I was like, "Ooh, Rand, you."
Which one? Star Surfers?
For Star Surfers, because like there are aspects that are great, but there are aspects like, especially like, I'm very proud of the ending of that one, but there are just like the it's almost like a movie where like it has a great finale, but like the points in between aren't fantastic. Like that line of dialogue isn't great. Like I get very nitpicky when it comes to my writing.
Of course you would, as the author, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's not the story I'm reading today. That's just the precursor to. That was written back in 2020, pandemic era. And then Strugglers, which is what I'm going to read to Dare.
Years ago.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Bernie
sandwich.
Bernie sandwich. Strugglers was written. Thankfully, I have the date on my hard copy.
I recommend Randy's writing.
Stop.
Sorry.
I was watching Dune.
Wonderful artist or writer. I don't know the difference.
I was watching Dune 2 on Friday.
Yeah.
And Christopher Walken is in that movie.
Oh no.
And every time he came on screen, I just started cracking up. And he's not even playing like silly Christopher Walken.
No, it's because of the stupid bit we've
yeah,
done.
absolutely. And every time I saw him, I'm like, the spice.
Put down the portal.
Paul Atreides.
I don't know why I'm doing the
the Donald Trump thing.
Yeah.
Back on track.
Yeah.
Strugglers. So, yeah, just to preface it, I guess, this was written in 2023 for my short story collection, which was one of the classes I took, which was just creative writing short story sequence, in which I had to write, I think it was 4 stories. It was an option of 4 stories with the last one being a really long one, or 5 stories with the last one being 2 stories. But yeah, this is the second of the series, and it's just for context or like pretext, I guess. The basic premise of the entire short story collection was that it was all centered around this diner called the Connections Diner.
Which we got to go to, by the way.
Yes.
They got great food.
Great staff. I don't know if you've heard their stories. Yeah. But basically, like, the entire point of the short story sequence is to find the individual stories within a collective place, and how that connection, and it explored connections. It literally was a little cheeky with the name of the fucking diner, but it was
I'm pogging in real life right
now. But it was basically like I wanted to explore different forms of connection, whether it was familial, whether it was through, as we'll see with strugglers, not familial, or like chosen connections, all that fun stuff. So, there's also something. So basically, the main character Allie in the story.
Love Allie.
She's from the southern states for some reason.
She's a menace.
And like, when I read this story, so basically I read this story for the student colloquium, which was like the whole like it was pretty much the creative showcase, but like on a university level.
Yeah.
And so I call attention to the fact that she's southern in the story, but I don't read it as a southern person whenever her dialogue comes up. I'm going to continue not doing that here.
Is that something you would do?
I don't know.
For a reading?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I also don't know. It just feels more natural to speak with my voice rather than like to inhabit the character's voice. So just like as a preface.
It's a reading, not a dramatization,
Yeah,
right?
I guess that's true. Yeah. So with that,
I could do the southern accent.
I think we'll pass.
Y'all been to that diner?
That's good. I like it. You got the gig.
Yeah.
You got the stuff, kid.
Hell yeah.
So, it's a bit of a longer piece.
I have a story for you after this. I'm sorry.
Oh, please.
After the very gotta be after the podcast.
Okay, I don't like this.
No, it's a good story.
All right. Speaking of hopefully good stories, here is
this is. I'm sorry to interject again, but
I just had the perfect segue.
I read this before. I read this story from this man here. I'll tell y'all right now.
I tell you what.
This is a banger story. I'm not even doing it for the bit anymore. No, This is a great story.
Thank you.
Like, strap yourselves in. Grab some popcorn.
Whoa. But yeah.
I love strugglers.
I think it's around 8 to 10 pages. So.
Allie is a bad bitch.
Let's get started.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my mic off.
All right. Goodbye. Dan just leaves. Strugglers. So we start with an article. Dashing Diner Dazzles by Patrick Warble. A friendly smile and the smell of a fresh pot of coffee. It's an unwritten staple of any family diner, and it's exactly what greets everyone who walks into the newly opened Connections Diner. While its grand opening was months ago, Connections has been able to maintain thriving business in this bustling city. In an industry decimated by mandated closures and labor shortages, Connections has found success. But how? What is Connections' secret to success? Is it the familiar yet lip-smacking good breakfast? Perhaps it's the antique jukebox in the corner that seems to exclusively belt out Gordon Lightfoot tunes. Well, while these elements help, it's my belief that it is the people behind the counter who are keeping customers coming back. That friendly smile I mentioned is on every employee's face as they effortlessly glide around the diner. The atmosphere exudes positivity, and it's infectious. I guarantee you cannot leave Connections without that joy making its way to you. Reader, Connections is one of the good ones, plain and simple. It's well worth your time seeking out this hidden gem, if only for a pick-me-up on your mood and a chat with the staff. And then we have a little ellipses. Allie was the first waitress to apply. In fact, Henry and his father hadn't begun their staff searching when Allie came to the door, resume in hand. She was in her late 40s, with big brown eyes and freshly drenched hair, courtesy of the 3 straight days of rain that had been hammering the streets. That didn't stop Allie. She hauled herself down 40 blocks to get to the diner, completely soaked, when Henry finally heard her rapping on the glass door and rushed to let her in. The bell rang out as the volume of the street invaded the diner. "Can I help you?" Henry asked, concerned and confused. "Hope so," Allie replied in a southern drawl, wringing out her hair. She pulled out a plastic bag, a piece of paper pristine and dry inside. I heard you always building yourselves a restaurant. I'm supposing you'll need a waitress." She shoved her resume into Henry's dusty hands. The paper only had 2 sections, scrawled in faded black marker. Name, Allison Braber. Relevant work experience, 28 years of pouring coffee, personally and professionally. There wasn't a customer who could resist Allie's southern charm. What drove her up to Canada has remained a mystery. Whenever asked, she'd simply wink and reply, "A car." She'd never said a word of her personal past. That didn't mean she had no stories to tell. There were regulars who'd come into Connections just for her stories. She'd tell all about the time she saw a cow pie that had the exact likeness of Jesus Christ himself. "It was a sign, I tell you," she would proclaim as she dropped off plates of pie, though she never explained what kind of sign it might have been. Or she'd tell about the time she got out of a speeding ticket by chattering to the police officer so much that he eventually walked away. Poor kid couldn't get a word in. I just kept jabbering about my cat's urinary problems, and he slowly backed away. She'd then proceed to tell the customers about her cat's urinary problems. It wasn't unusual for Allie to pull up a chair and sit around the table as guests ate their meals or drank their coffees. She was the in-house entertainment, as far as anyone was aware, besides the jukebox, of course. That was Allie. She had an inherent gift for connecting with anyone who walked through the front door. Well, almost anyone. It was a foggy fall morning, a Tuesday, when the struggler first shuffled in to Connections. Her jacket was a size too big, and her raggedy rubber boots seemed a size too small, as she hobbled through the door. Her face was gray, and her eyes were cold. She looked to the floor as she trudged toward the corner booth. "Be with you in a minute, hon," called out Allie, as she bounced a sleeping baby on her lap. The parents were sitting around their table, slack-jawed at Allie's power to calm the baby down. Allie winked as she handed the baby back to the confounded couple, patting the kid on the head. She picked up her coffee pot, stretched out her aching back, She stretched out her aching back and headed over to the struggler's table, a replastered smile at the ready. Her pot poured hot coffee into the struggler's mug. The struggler sat still and despondent, her eyes down at the table. Allie rose to the challenge. "That should brighten you up. Basic breakfast is on special, but between you and me, it's the pancakes you're going to want. Old Joe in the kitchen makes them with a smidge of cinnamon, even though Henry tells him to stick to the recipe." Still, no response from the struggler. "Now, what's the name I'm putting on this here order?" The struggler's hands trembled towards the coffee mug. Allie frowned. "You hear me okay, sugar?" The struggler's head perked up. "Sugar," she yelped. Her voice came out shrill and crackly, like a radio turned too high. Both the struggler and Allie looked around, embarrassed. "Sugar, coming right up." Allie went off before the old woman could say anything else. Joe was scraping at the grill when Allie hurried into the kitchen. Joe was a giant of a man, wizened but lively. He was so focused that he didn't notice Allie come in until she tapped him on the shoulder. "There's a woman out there," she said, looking through the serving window. "A struggler." She wasn't sure of what else to say but that. Joe nodded, then continued on with his work, as if Allie had told him something as expected as a car honking. Strugglers were what Allie called people who had a bad hand thrown their way in life. Physically struggling, mentally struggling. Strugglers were the people who tried to endure as best as they could, only to have a few people throw scraps of pity into their hesitantly outstretched hands. Allie knew a struggler after a few moments of interaction. They wouldn't say anything to give themselves away. Allie just knew from experience. She'd been one for the last decade of her life. All the stories and happy customers in the world weren't enough to pay for a roof over her head. The diner was moderately successful, but that didn't mean there was ever enough when payday came along, especially when 1 month's rent cost more than what she made in 3. Her boss, Henry, didn't know. Nobody knew. Allie made sure of that. Employers don't hire people who have inoperative car superstore parking lot listed as their forwarding address. Allie, the friendliest southern woman in the north, didn't want anything to do with another struggler. Her best strategy was to keep a wide berth. The longer she spent with a struggler, the greater the chance that she'd be exposed for all to see. Just like Allie was able to figure the struggler out, it wouldn't be long before the struggler could do the same. The less connection, the better. The rest of the shift went by, with Allie spending the least amount of time possible at the struggler's table, while chatting as loud as she could with any other customer in the diner. The performance had to be kept up. The struggler continued to sit at the table, taking as long as she could to finish her, by then, cold cup of coffee. She hadn't said a word to anyone, as if too scared by her outburst earlier. Eventually, Allie heard the ring of the bell hanging above the door. She looked over to see the struggler's table empty. The mug was sitting on the counter, the table spotless. The struggler would come back every week, every Tuesday morning. She'd drink 1 cup of coffee before disappearing when the bill came due. Not that Allie would have charged her. She could tell that they shared the same struggle. She never took the time to confirm this with the struggler, always wordlessly pouring her a cup full of coffee, always leaving sugar nearby. But she knew. There was a fear lurking in Allie's mind that the struggler would tell others of free coffee at Connections for anyone going through a rough patch. That'd be a surefire way for questions to be raised by Henry. Henry hiring her was the chance she needed. She knew that if she brought trouble, she'd be back in her car without a dime in her broken cup holder. Weeks went by. Winter came, the coldest in years. Allie picked up shifts as much as she could, working doubles, just to keep warm for a little while longer each day, all to avoid the trek to her car in the freezing evenings. She had tried the shelters a few times in the past, but the security of a locked door was a luxury she craved, while her car gave the slightest scrap of warmth that beat the street. It was the first week of December when the struggler didn't show up. Allie had grown used to reserving her table every Tuesday morning, the absence shaking her to the core. The struggler was usually punctual, as if coffee at I'm starting to fall apart. The struggler was usually punctual, as if coffee at Connections was a part of her internal clock. When the struggler didn't show up, Allie felt guilty of her initial relief. It was the second Tuesday that came and went without the struggler, when Allie's thoughts began to be consumed by the old woman who used to sit in the corner. Customers had begun to notice Allie becoming withdrawn, distracted. The tinkling of the doorbell would tear her away from her conversations as her head snapped to see who it was. It was never the struggler. "Order!" yelled Joe from the serving window. Allie snapped back to reality. The meals had been piling up on the counter, waiting to go out to patient customers. Embarrassed, Allie rushed to her duties. After the lunch rush, Joe pulled Allie aside, giving her a questioning stare. "I never asked her name," was Allie's reply, her eyes fixed on the corner booth. The sounds of snowplows scraping pavement were echoing through the empty diner on the third week of the struggler's absence, as Allie helped close up. It was only her and Joe left, Henry being called away earlier in the day. "There's a problem with the purveyors," Henry mumbled, doing up his coat at the door. "I'll be back to help open up in the morning." "Been a lot of problems with the purveyors lately," Joe commented, concern in his voice, as he placed a plate on the serving window. Allie shrugged. That had been around noon. By now, the street lamps had struggled to life outside. Allie finished her final swipe of the mop on the diner floors before she went to grab her faded coat. The sound of the kitchen's back door slammed shut as Joe came back inside. His breathing was short and panicked. "What's wrong?" Allie asked. Joe didn't mind. Joe breathlessly pointed to the door. "Damn street rat standing behind me as I was taking out the trash. Hardly noticed her until she was standing on my heels." Allie's heart sank. It couldn't be her. She'd been gone for too long. Allie kept her composure, not wanting Joe to get suspicious of anything. The two locked up the diner and went to go their separate ways. "Let me drive you home, Allie," Joe called from his car, one foot in the driver's seat, the other on the pavement. "It's too cold to be walking tonight." Normally, Allie would take the ride. She'd asked Joe to drop her on a corner close to her parking lot, always claiming that the construction on her street was too much of a hassle for Joe to drop her right at the door of her imaginary apartment. Then it was a 10-minute walk to get to her actual home. Tonight was different. She had to know. After sending Joe off, Allie frantically headed behind the diner. The old woman was huddled against a wall. Had Allie not seen her every week, it would have been tough to try and to identify her. The struggler's lips were blistered, and her eyelashes were caked in ice. Allie rushed to her side, saying nothing, as she put the struggler's arm around her shoulders. Allie didn't think. She just started walking. It took an hour for her to trudge through the snow of 40 blocks with another human depending on her. The two didn't say anything. Allie knew how humbling winter can be on a struggler's soul. Eventually, they made it to Allie's car. She unlocked the passenger door and rested the struggler inside and placed her cardboard barrier across the inside of the windshield from the driver's seat, hiding the two from any prying eyes. Reaching into the back seat, Allie laid her only blanket on her passenger's shivering body. They sat together, no words exchanged throughout the long night. The only sounds Allie heard were passing cars and the struggler's ragged breathing. Morning came early. Allie didn't sleep much, constantly checking on the struggler's condition through the night. The old woman was still sleeping by the time Allie went to step out of the car. "Stay as long as you need," she whispered as she laid a comforting hand on the struggler's patch-ridden head before shutting the door. It was the first thing she had said to her. The struggler woke with a start when Allie returned later that night. The fear and uncertainty in her eyes were eased when she saw a somewhat familiar face. 2 to-go cups were sitting on the dashboard, their steam fogging up the glass. Allie handed one to the struggler, who hesitated. "Don't worry, There's sugar in there. She smiled at the struggler. The struggler managed to do the same. Allie took out the cardboard barrier. Outside, clumps of snow floated through the air, shining in the parking lot lamps. The two looked out, savoring each sip of their coffees until both cups were empty. Allie finally broke the silence. I never asked your name. Joan, the woman whispered. I'm sorry it took so long to sit down for coffee with you, Joan. I'm Allie. And that's Strugglers. Woo!
I'm so silent. I'm so quiet for the audience at home because I've read this before, and it's a completely different experience when someone reads it to you.
How so?
Because I didn't have such a sense of how I feel about the characters. It's almost changed.
Okay.
In a sense, not in a bad way, in a sense of like, man, okay, well, first of all, it's a fantastic piece of writing.
I appreciate that.
It feels, there's more, it just feels like there's more emotion when someone's reading it to you.
Yeah.
And it also feels, in a way, somewhat more, I guess, almost like sad or disheartening at the situation that these people are in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't really, I felt a lot more hopeful when I was reading it the first time and when I finished it. And there was always that twinge of discomfort and you know, the ambivalency of what is going to happen to the characters.
Yeah.
But when you read it here in front of me, it feels realer, and I feel more sad.
That's really
for the characters.
Yeah, that's super fascinating because, real talk, I had little to no confidence in this piece.
Really,
I wrote it and I was like, like it. Sometimes I get pieces where they're what I call the piece that I can't crack. In that, a deadline comes up and it's not what I want it to be.
Yeah.
So I sent it in. For my professor to mark it, and obviously a mark is a subjective thing at the end of the day when it comes to creative writing. Like they can mark grammar, they can mark sentence structure, they can mark all that stuff, but at the end of the day, how do you mark a story?
Yeah.
So I sent it in and I got glowing feedback, and to the point where I was like, that's not that can't be true.
Right.
Like I remember my first piece that I submitted for this short story collection. I was like, oh, my first piece is way better than the second piece. And then based on what my professor was telling me, it was like, no, this is
the one,
way better. And I was like, wow, okay. So to go back to what you were saying about like that sadness, I remember writing that ending because again, I love writing endings. My favorite thing is leaving a story with like just something to like something that isn't just like, and they were all good. Yeah. And like,
there's ambiguity there.
Yeah. I love an ambiguous ending. I really, really do.
Yeah.
There's a thing called like en media res, which is like in the middle of things. When you start a story. Mm-hmm. So like if a story were to start with, I was running down the street when I finally decided that I was going to change my life or something like that. That's like in the middle of things.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of like applying that to the end of a story. Like it ends in the middle of things.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So that's kind of my thing for that.
The story starts sort of in the middle of things. It does. But you also get some of the like preamble of what the character, who Allie is and where she came from and what she's been doing. And then, it ends in it is a very ambiguous ending. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel a lot worse for the struggler, you having read it to me, than me reading it.
Yeah.
It just felt realer. It felt more raw. I don't know.
No, that's totally fair. Like another thing about this short story collection was that I based it on Stuart McLean, like the Vinyl Cafe, which is it was a weekly CBC radio show in which Stuart McLean would read a story every week about Dave in the Littlest Record store, the Vinyl Cafe. And it was like I based it on that because like I was like, oh man, there's something powerful about somebody reading a story about nothing, about day to day, like they're like
Slice of life almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Strugglers is something that I'm really, really proud of like, obviously I don't, there is an aspect of the story that I'm not super comfortable with the idea of me writing about a homeless person's experience. I think that's kind of,
holy shit, do I get that?
right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of not cool.
I disagree.
Sorry, it's not genuine.
I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I would counterpoint would be it's your perspective on such a matter.
Yeah.
I also totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like when I write about like war and military things, and it's like, what the hell am I doing, dude?
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But it's an interpretive tale.
Yeah.
Of your own creativity.
And I guess if it's approached with reverence and it's approached without the assumption of I know exactly what this is like, then I think you can do something interesting with it and use it as a narrative device.
I found a way to sort of sum up what I've been trying to say.
Yeah, please.
I felt worry for the struggler when you were reading it to me.
Wow.
When it turned to Allie wondering where she was when she didn't show up, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah. And
I felt it. I was like, man, I hope I knew she was okay because I've read the story.
Exactly, yeah.
But I didn't feel it the first time. Well, not to the same extent the first time I read through it. And then this time I was like, oh, I hope Joan's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, please.
I was just going to say, I like the fact that Joan doesn't talk.
Me too. I think
it's a very mysterious element.
There was actually like a last minute change to the story, and I remember I sent you the first draft of it, and I changed it right before I sent it to you, so it wasn't like incorporated very well. I just did a find and replace, but I didn't call her the struggler throughout the entire thing. I called her Joan, and I was just like, and then Joan walked in, and then from then on I'd be like, Joan was sitting in the corner, Joan was doing this, and I found that it was way more effective for the regrets for Allie to not even ask her name.
I was literally going to say that's a connection between the character Joan and the reader.
Yeah.
That when you don't have, you've got that aura of like, oh, fuck, we don't even know this woman.
Yeah.
And I care for her. And so that was I feel like that was probably a good choice.
Yeah. And I was really glad with like that. That's that spark of creativity all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Just showing up and be like, I have one more idea before I send this in. Or
it was a banger idea.
Yeah. So I did that.
Isn't it interesting how such a simple change it would be a different story.
Yeah. If
that change hadn't been made.
The ending wouldn't hit that hard. The ending wouldn't hit hard if Allie didn't take that one moment to
ask her name, and
when there's a moment of relative calm, and I think like I was really going for like a calm ending rather than a depressing ending where like, oh man, and then the struggler in her last breath said this, or, you know, right? Like no,
or she just dies in the car.
Like that'd
what?
be. I feel like that's too melodramatic. I think what works better is just that calm and like that moment of, hey, we're okay for right now, and that's all that matters.
Just the slightest bit of calm.
Yeah.
The eye of the storm.
Yeah.
Because it's probably going to get worse.
Yeah.
Or better. Who knows?
Absolutely.
You do.
I do. Actually, I don't. That's another thing where, like, if I were to continue the short story sequence even farther, then maybe I would delve into that. But I didn't.
Right.
I had 4 stories, and I wrote 4 stories. Yeah.
Is this in the same realm that I was talking about of how it's not necessary for like a piece or a story to be done?
Yes.
Yeah. You see what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that like we had that conversation before we got to this as well. Is that like
it's very relevant.
Extremely relevant. I never feel it goes back to what I talked about earlier with that quote of like perfection is the enemy of done.
Yes.
In that like I'm a perfectionist. I hate it, and I hate that I continuously analyze something and be like, well, there's something that I can't put my finger on. It's basically like that thing of like I can't crack this.
Yeah.
One of my creative writing assignments or classes was for playwriting, and I wrote a play, and I remember submitting it to my professor and being like, I can't crack this. Like, this is the best that I have for right now for this deadline that I need to hit.
Yeah.
But this is not. I can't finish this story.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 3 years from now I'll go back and read it and I'll be like, oh, obviously I need to do this, or like, you know, I'll have better writing experience to understand what the story needs.
Right.
This story needed something more than just, man, it sucks that everybody's struggling, or I think what's also effective about the story is that like Allie's plight is something that like I hear a lot of stories about, but I never, and like it's almost like, yeah, it's invisible homelessness is basically the term for it, and that like people just
hide it.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to look into why, or not look into why, but like analyze a character in which, what would their motivation be for that?
Right.
Why is it, or it's this big dirty and quotation marks secret that needs to be hidden at all costs, otherwise won't get hired or anything like that. So there's one other point I want to bring up about the story, and then I'm like was kind of a revelation for me. I don't really show my writing off to people like a lot. Like, so when it comes to writing, I want to invoke at least some sort of emotion in somebody who's reading, somebody who's listening, whatever. Whether it's good emotion, bad emotion, like they could hate it. Yeah. And I'm like, great, tell me about it. Why? You know, like I would like to know. Yeah. Obviously that stings, but like I understand, and I would like to know. Yes. So I gave this piece to somebody to read over as like a, hey, can you check this out and like make sure it works. And I was sitting next to them as I read it, and I was just on my phone or whatever. I was just like trying not to look over their shoulder as they were reading the story. And they started crying by the end of it. Oh, wow. And I was like, yes. But at the same time, I'm so sorry.
No, that's hell yeah.
Yeah. And like that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, this is an effective story.
Yes. That's beautiful.
And that's, I don't know. Yeah. So that was cool. And I think like, do you ever strive for that with your music? Like, is there ever like a piece where you want to challenge yourself of like, I want somebody to feel this emotion?
I don't do it necessarily that way, but the way I see it is that every single piece of my music is an expression of my emotions and my thoughts in that moment in time. So essentially when you're listening to one of my pieces of music, you're getting a window into what I was feeling like in that minute. Yeah. And
a snapshot.
So sort of, yeah. So I would say it happens relatively frequently that my music can invoke an emotion of some sort. But I don't go with the intent of doing that. Yeah. It's just sort of, I'm screenshotting my brain right now, and here's what it sounds like. Yeah. If I could show you what my thought process sounds like right now, this is it. And when I'm writing a song, it's in that moment. And so to an extent, perhaps,
I like that. Yeah. It's almost like, it's almost like the structuring, like when you're putting up the scaffolding. I think like one of my creative writing professors told me, think of it like scaffolding, like write what you want. There's another, Alana Pierce is a YouTuber, and she talks about like, oh, sorry, she's not just a YouTuber. She also works at Sony Santa Monica on God of War. So kind of a big deal writer. A little bit. She's like, whenever I'm doing like stories, like writing, I write it like a children's story first.
Oh, and interesting.
Then, after, I kind of like to get the narrative building blocks in place, and then you build it out from there. Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's really fascinating. I don't think that far ahead, but like like
I totally get that.
That's kind of my writing process. I don't think very far ahead. I'm very much just like, okay, how do I get to the next page? Oh. But like not in a bad way, but more like a, how do I get this story to the next page?
How do I get there? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like, because I do a lot of writing too. I mean, clearly not as much or as good as you, but I like to write dialogue first. Yeah. Because a lot of my ideas and a lot of my scenes are interpersonal. And I find writing dialogue to be very natural. I don't know.
Yeah. I struggle with dialogue a lot.
It sets up a lot of things. Because if you write, 30 sentences, like here's you, me, you, and I don't write said Randy, exclaimed Randy. I just write the line. Yeah. And it's contextual as to who's talking. And if you're a good writer,
you can usually
it's not hard for the right audience to figure out. Yeah. And doing the dialogue first can set up a lot of the in-between exposition. Yeah. Like if the person's getting angry in the dialogue, that automatically sets up like, oh, he slapped something off the table, or he slammed his fist down, and it almost helps your writing create itself, I feel like. Yeah. At least that's how I feel. Yeah. Specifically with dialogue, because I'll do 600 words of dialogue and then go in and like fill in the blanks, like
I like that,
connect the dots.
That's a really interesting, like
that's how I do it.
That's definitely not how I operate, but I find that fascinating that that's how you do it. Right. And that like man, like obviously like the creative process for anybody is so different.
Yes.
Like if I were to write music, then it'd be completely different than
Right.
how you write music, right? Like obviously we have different ways of how we were kind of brought up to like apply our technique
Of course.
on things.
Or just our perspective on things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally different.
Yeah. Which makes it way more fascinating than if we were all just robots doing the same thing and being like, I'm as good as you are and you're as good as I am. And it's not even like it's not a competition of good or bad. It's more like,
if everything's the same color, then everything's the same color.
Exactly. So. And I think like, I get so bored when like things are exactly the same over and over again, or especially with conversation.
Right.
That's why I like this podcast because it's usually just like different conversations.
Different pretty much every time.
Yeah,
even the repeat episodes are different.
Yeah.
Except the just chatting. Those are bullshit. Those are just nonsense.
Those are just like we don't have an idea for this week. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
That
was a very beautiful piece of writing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I was definitely like, oh
yeah.
I'm worried about her, even though I know she's okay.
I touched on this at the end of our music part 2 episode, but like my Achilles heel is old people.
Me too.
I can't fucking handle it. And so
I talked about the Titanic.
Yeah.
Remember? Yep.
Yep.
I'll cry at that scene.
Yep.
I will bawl at that scene.
And like so my immediate, for me at least, if I want to feel something, put an old person in the piece and have them struggle. Yeah. I'm like, no.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's why I made Joan just like this, almost like a grandma that just
kind of
was left behind.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh,
don't say that.
Man, like it hurts.
Yeah, even in this conversation post reading, I can still hurts. It's like, oh God, I'm the same way with. Well, I grew up with old parents, so like. It really fucking hurts. Yeah. That's beautiful.
One last thing for this was that like I think I had to do a follow-up writing exercise in class, which was basically just like write a short epilogue to your story. I'm like, oh, okay.
Do you have it? Because I don't want it to be spoiled.
I don't know if I could find it.
Oh,
I can. Let me just give you like the basic idea though. Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to find it.
Okay.
It's probably in a scribbler somewhere in my closet, and I don't know where.
Okay.
I'll try and find it. But basically, the idea is that, like, it's the conversation after the end of this story.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically, like, Joan pulls out a picture of her standing in front of the Roman Colosseum. And it's her as a young woman with a full head of hair and full set of teeth.
Right.
And she doesn't even say anything. She just, like, points to the picture and points at her, and she just she's basically, and Allie's like, that's you, and she's like, yep. I'm like, and that's it, that's all there is to the scene. But it's basically just the idea of like, this is still a person that had a life.
Yeah.
And then
that's sad.
I know, I write sad shit sometimes, man.
You should write that again.
Yeah,
because that would be like, does the concept of an epilogue make you sad?
It feels like saying goodbye sometimes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I always struggled with that.
That genuinely
Strugglers.
was... Yeah, right?
I pogged in real life again.
Let's go.
No, you're 100% right. It's like, I'm in 5 minutes when I'm finished reading whatever I'm reading, I'm closing the story.
Yeah.
And I'll never get to read it again for the first time.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it sucks.
Oh, no.
Usually I never anticipate ending a novel that I'm reading. Because I'm always just like...
You're so into it?
If I'm into the novel,
yes,
of course.
Yeah.
But like, if I'm really into a story and I'm like, oh, what do you mean there's only 20 pages left? No! Yeah. Like, like...
Have you ever not read something maybe that you've already previously read because you know it's going to hurt? I have, to put it in context.
Yeah, please.
I have a series of stories. Mm-hmm. It's called the Darkness Trilogy. It's a series of novels.
Yeah.
I read them when I was a kid. And they're like really, really well done. And there are some ideas and like philosophical concepts that were explored in those novels that helped shape me as a person that still like apply to my life today.
Yeah.
And I have them. I can't read them.
Yeah.
It hurts to read those words.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot bring myself. I'll get a few pages in. And I'll think of what's coming.
Yeah.
And the care, and I will cry.
That's so interesting.
I cannot bring myself to read them.
We were talking about this before we started the podcast. Was like me watching Better Call Saul, and I was like, I know what's coming, and this is gonna hurt so much. Do I have that? I have that in journal entries. Like, when I keep quite a bit of my journal entries sometimes, and like I usually only journal when I'm going through bad times, so it's usually not a great like read through
Right.
of like, oh, let's go down memory lane real
Yeah.
quick. So like some of my journal entries from college, I'm very much just like, I'm just gonna leave that alone. Like I don't think this is the right time to be reading these. And like I like that they're there, but sometimes I just don't want to go back and read my own writing.
Of course.
Yeah.
So yeah. So in a way, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. So Dan, we're at a crossroads here. We're at an hour 15.
I disagree. I think we go.
Okay,
I
love
think
it.
we just send it.
Absolutely.
We've done our fair share. We've done our 40-minute episodes before.
Absolutely.
So
So, with that out of the way, Dan, I would love to hear your second piece of music.
we're doing another piece of music.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do this time. Probably not going to do, because in my first one I did Watching the Stars with You, which was a really like light, hopeful one.
Yeah.
And then When Love Is Your Only Motivation is similar.
Mhm.
I think I'll do a darker one this time.
Sure.
I've got this piece here. Where the hell is it? It's called The Heartbeat of Chaos.
Okay.
Well, cringe. No. Edgy. A lot of my music, including the things we've listened to, are for my, because I have my like story and like my universe, and it's very broad. And a lot of my music, like the overwhelming majority of my music, is for scenes or characters or plot lines or. So this is for that. This is it's not that I like know where it's going to occur or where the piece of music is going to be used, but I know what the idea is about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obviously clearly a much darker point in the story. It's sort of a musical representation of the evil forces that are working against the protagonists in the story, and because you know, like when I say evil forces, I don't mean spiritual, you know, but I mean like the bad guys and the bad guys. Yeah. So, are we good or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
This called The Heartbeat of Chaos. Oh, that is fucking cringe. Lol. Okay, here we go. It almost feels like a sister piece to the previous one, doesn't it?
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
Is that what you were thinking too? Yeah,
Kinda, yeah.
When I hear that, I'm like, they're similar.
It's almost like the.
That's what I'm saying when I say I just write the same shit over and over again.
No, but it's almost like the antagonistic
and
version.
the
of it.
antithesis of such a piece.
Yeah, I was gonna use antithesis.
Yeah. Well, you did it.
Well, you beat me to the goddamn punch.
No, you said your line first.
All right.
No.
But yeah, no, it's
That's a darker piece.
I think I've told you this before, but like a lot of your music, I can apply to so many, like either a movie or a game. Like I can see it.
I get that a lot.
I can hear it.
It's pretty cinematic, I will say.
Yeah,
it's a more cinematic piece of music.
Absolutely, and I think like that really like speaks to obviously your caliber of creating music.
Dango.
But yeah, I just yeah, it's tricky because I want to ask the same questions that I asked the first time, but at the same time, this is a completely different track. You know, like
then I think you should ask them, and I'll give you different answers.
Well, first of all, like, was this a one where you went in with an idea, or was this one build it as it goes? But also, like, what's the context behind this one? Like, when did you make it?
Oh, Oh shit! You should have asked that one first.
My bad.
No. This was definitely another one where it was inspiration, and I was in a flow state.
Yeah.
The name, like, yeah, it's edgy, haha, but I feel like it's relevant because I don't know if you picked up on it, but the pizzicato is the heartbeat.
Oh shit!
Well, I'm gonna play it again, folks. Here we go.
Yeah, because I noticed that you were kind of like nodding your head to the beat of it.
Sure was. I was also tapping my foot to it.
Yeah.
But
and then I started picking up on it.
If we jump ahead just a little bit. Boom. Boom.
Yeah.
That's the heartbeat.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that was an afterthought.
Okay.
I had the strings, and it was dark and moody, and I was like, these are pretty but kind of basic.
Okay.
And I was like, this needs a force pushing it forward because it's very slow.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, what if I added low staccato, which is where you like quickly drag your dun, dun, you drag your bow across the strings, but like you like bounce it off, sort of.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was that really low, like continuous sound, but it was a little abrasive.
Yeah.
And I switched to the pizzicato, and I was like, ooh, I put a lot of reverb on it.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, that blends together.
What's that process like for you where like
just 1 second.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say that's where the name came from.
Yeah.
I put in the pizzicato, and I was like, it's like a heartbeat. It's like the song is alive and it has a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's the name. I'm sorry. What's the
no,
process?
No,
like?
don't apologize.
No, that was it. That was it.
What's that process for you like where it's like, when do you feel like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, if that makes sense?
No, that's a very real thing.
Yeah.
You can hear it. You're like, this doesn't need this.
Okay.
Now it takes, I'll just say quite a bit of skill to know when to pull the reins.
Yeah.
Because you can just keep adding and adding and adding. And if you don't have an ear that knows when you've added too much, well, then you don't know when you've added too much.
Yeah.
And it takes, there's beauty in simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And you've probably noticed, but a lot of these like pieces, well, the first one, When Love Is Your Only Motivation, that's just strings and a choir.
Right.
And then the reverb is doing a lot of the work. Same thing here, strings and a choir. It really is like the antithesis of the other piece, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe they should be sister pieces.
That'd be cool.
I don't know. Well, I have a number of those
Sure.
where it's like piece A and piece B and they go together. And, but what was your question was how do I know?
It's a sense.
It's a sense experience.
Yeah.
And obviously you just get to the point where you're like, this is way too loud, way too many things going on.
And that's super fascinating though, because it can go both ways. Because obviously you showed us earlier the piece where it was like what 2020 and then 2023.
Yes.
And like it needed more.
Yes, of course.
Right. Like
there's that fine balance.
Yeah.
Because, well, there's an entire discussion to be had there. Because in that other one, and Here's to Eternity, maybe I'll pull it up for a second.
Yeah, please.
There's like 2 or 3 instruments in the new one that are playing at the same time.
Okay.
However, they all come together to form a single sound. So here I'm going to play this for the audience at home. Oops, this one. So I hear a mandolin type thing.
Yep.
I hear a synth.
Mm-hmm.
I hear, I think, a reverberated piano. There's 3 or 4 things in there making the sound. But especially the intro, if I just jump back, it's kind of just one sound.
Yeah.
They all
like
come,
a harpsichord.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah.
They all come together to make one cohesive thing. So there's always it's a balance of like, what is this sound doing in the piece? Is the sound in the forefront? Is it like in Heartbeat of Chaos? Hold on, let's go back. Heartbeat of Chaos. In this piece, those big, deep, dark strings.
Yeah.
It's only one sound.
Yeah.
But they are the main thing, and they don't really need anything else.
Right.
But
they're the focus. Turn
this down a bit. But in Here's to Eternity, the one we were just listening to, when it was just one piano, it was lifeless.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of pay attention to what each individual sound in the track is doing, because different sounds, even though it's just a single sound, they can all be used in different manners.
Yeah.
And it's a balance. It's a delicate dance.
Yeah,
of
and
knowing what goes where.
That's super, like, I love that, because it means that music is not a composing is not an absolute science. It's not like okay, so if I'm using strings, then I need to ensure that it complements this and blah 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 blah. You know,
there is an element of that.
Yeah, but
it's only about 20% of the job.
Sure,
the other 80% or even 90% is your own creative ability, and that can be split into half into skill and how would you describe it? Because like, you can be a really, really skillful composer and have like just a terrible sense of like, I don't know, maybe like humanity in your piece or the creativity or like, I often think about shredding on guitar. Okay. Really, really fast playing. It's really, really skillful. Yeah. It also sounds boring as hell to me.
Yeah, okay.
Because it doesn't feel real in the sense of like, it doesn't feel meaningful. Now, that's not the case for everything, of course. That's a very broad statement.
Sure, yeah.
But you get what I'm saying?
I do.
There's skill and then there's feeling.
Intention, I feel like, is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Like,
what are you trying to say with what you're doing?
Yeah. So. And for that, it's very much like if we're shredding on guitar, let's stick with your example. There's obviously intention behind that.
Of course.
Lot of the time. It's but at the same time, for when it's almost like me watching watching a sci-fi movie. I'm like, I completely respect this, but I'm not getting what you want me to get out of this.
Yeah.
Right now, you know.
Yeah. I would wager probably not a lot of cases, but in some cases, it almost feels like some people substitute feeling for skill. And while I respect your skill immensely, I can't fucking do that. That takes years and years of practice.
Absolutely.
I don't feel anything from it.
Yeah.
And I want to feel things when I'm listening to music or reading a piece of writing.
Yeah.
Or any creative endeavor. I don't particularly care how long you went to school, for the matter.
No.
I don't particularly care how wide your vocabulary is or how fast you can dislocate your pinky with how fast you shred. I want to feel something. And if you can't make me feel something, surmounting what you're doing with more skill, in a lot of cases, personally, of course, doesn't work for me.
That's interesting. You and I share that, in that, like, if I'm not, actually, Dune Part 2 is a great example. Dune Part 1 is a great example. Respect the hell out of it. But if I leave your movie without really feeling anything, and you had me there for 2.5 hours.
What did you do? What? Not you, like the movie. What did you accomplish?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. Why didn't you enjoy it?
What the fuck, Ray? I love those movies. Never seen them.
But like, yeah, that's usually my benchmark for like my base impression of a movie. If I felt something by the end of that movie, then you did the job.
Yeah.
You did something that for me was
worked.
Impactful.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't get that with every single thing. Like, I don't know, if I'm reading a book, I'm not going to be like, I hope to end it off with something of strong emotion or feel something.
Yeah.
But obviously, not at every chapter I'm going to feel something, right?
Right.
Like,
it's like a building thing.
Yeah. Or like with a song, it's very short amount of time for like a 2-minute to 3-minute song to make me feel something. It's the repeated listens that get me to analyze it further.
Yes.
And then find that feeling
and apply it to your own perspective and life.
Yeah, absolutely. When you actually listen to the lyrics, or you actually listen to honestly with your pieces as well, it's very much invokes emotion.
Thank you.
And I feel like that's something that a lot of things can just be noise. A lot of times a lot of music can just be noise.
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm looking for, and I don't think a lot of people are looking for.
I would argue that sometimes music just being there for the sake of being there is like not necessarily like
it has its place.
Lo-fi.
Yep.
Lo-fi is like, I'm not gonna actively listen to this.
Yep.
I'm gonna do something else. I'm listening to, but that's its niche.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's for.
Yes.
That's what it exists for. Well, that's not what it exists for, but
sure.
For my purposes, that's what it exists for, and that's what I love it for.
That's the application that you can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when things are just if music just exists to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't make you feel anything. It's like what? I guess if the person writing it, of course, I speak as the position of the listener.
Yeah.
that's just, I don't feel anything from it, but someone else might feel very strongly towards it.
Yeah.
And that's good. I hope that's the case.
Totally. Well, and that's kind of the beauty of art, though, and like, is that
beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, man.
It's very, very true.
And that goes back to what we were talking about, where like if we were all robots and experienced the same thing in the exact same way,
what?
Good Lord, would that be boring?
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting when I go and talk to somebody who loved Doom Part 2, and I keep harping on Doom Part 2 because it's the last thing I saw. But like, when I go talk to them and they're like, "Oh, dude, I fucking loved this movie." Yeah. I'm like, "That's awesome. Tell me about it," because I didn't, and I would love to talk about that with somebody who did. An album. If somebody were to listen to an album and be like, "Oh man, that wasn't for me," I'm like, but I loved it, and therefore all of a sudden we have this.
Then I'm throwing hands.
Yeah, it's like, how dare you? But no, I that's why I love conversation, man. And like it's disagreement in a respectful way, in that like it's easy to listen to somebody and then ask and be curious about their opinion. Well, maybe not easy, but it's way more interesting. With
some people it's easy.
Yeah.
Those are the best people.
Yeah.
Because it's like, whoa, nice. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Good Mythical Morning. Let's talk about that.
So, well, I had another question teed up for you. About this piece, and it was going to be super cool, and it was going to be insightful, and it was going to get a response that I always love, which is like, "That's a great question," but it's gone.
Don't you love when someone's like, "That's a really good question"?
My God.
I love it too.
I was talking to Brad 100%. About that one time, where I was just like, "That is like my crack cocaine." It's like when somebody says, "That's a great question,"
and you're like, "Nice."
It sure was.
I'm insightful.
I thought about it first.
I was paying attention.
Yeah, right. Pretty much. Yeah, no.
You don't have the question?
I don't have the question.
You can't
I'm so
tease
sorry.
me like that, man.
I'm so sorry.
What the heck?
While I try and search for that question.
Yeah.
Do you prefer writing darker music, or do you prefer, or is it more like a whatever your mindset is at that moment,
it's
that snapshot?
It's that.
Yeah.
I have no real preference. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick. Oh, man, that's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put it on the board.
I was about to say that I think I probably prefer writing happier music, but now that I think about it, I write a lot of dark music.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they're usually snapshots of my emotions in that period. So there's some pieces where you can go and it's like, oh, he was clearly really depressed.
Sure.
So I don't know. I feel like I'm probably right in the middle.
Okay.
Because the pieces of music are like my babies.
Yeah.
I love them. I love my music, not in the sense that I think I'm a great composer. I love my music because it exists.
Yeah, you created it.
It's my creative child,
yeah.
And all of these pieces of music are my kids, and I love them. And there are definitely kids I love more.
Right.
There are definitely some kids that are just pieces of shit, but that's more my fault.
Okay.
So, well, I made them.
That's
so.
such a funny analogy.
What?
It's just like, you fucking asshole kids, and then there's, yeah.
But so I think I'm probably in the middle.
That's interesting, because I was about to say that I really enjoy writing, like happy writing as well. But I look back at my library, it's a lot of dealing with like basically like my shorthand for like, how do I write an impactful story? Well, sadness.
Yeah.
And like I have tried in the past to try and pull away from that, and like, no, you can write a good story without conflict being that the kid has daddy issues, or their brother passed away, or something like that, right? Like,
yeah.
There can be one of my favorite examples of like how to do a positive movie that elicits emotion, and is not impactful story, but a effective story, are the Paddington movies. There's like no conflict in those movies whatsoever, or just very bare bones conflict in those movies, but they somehow make me cry every time because it's just so wholesome.
Is that the bear?
Yeah, it is the bear.
Yeah.
Paddington Bear. Highly recommend. They're fantastic movies.
I like the scene where he makes the marmalade.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
He does do that.
I've never seen him.
It's
Sorry.
very good.
A lot of sugar.
so
much goddamn sugar.
So good. Yeah. That is fascinating that like you find that, I don't know.
I've found in my writing about my stories and my characters, and because I've got a story. I've got like a
Yes.
beginning and the end is sort of still up in the air because
Okay.
I'm still workshopping that, but it's a very long story. My favorite thing thus far in terms of writing has been the overwhelming majority of the beginning and the middle and towards the end-ish of the story they're dark.
Yeah.
They're dark, they're gritty, they are sad, they're depressing in a lot of scenes.
Sure.
And some of my favorite writing recently has been towards the end of the story, things turn to the better. They don't
like that.
They don't, it's not a happy ending,
No.
but there's closure, there's catharsis,
Yeah.
there's justice, there's an uptick for these characters that have been through a lot because it takes place during a war.
Yeah.
And you're in one of the main character's name is Valor, and he's a soldier in the military that is climbing through ranks, and
Sure.
it's a story about changing from overcoming the challenges of turning from just a cadet to more of a leader, and like losing men that were your friends, and anyways, but towards the end of the story there is a positive uptick, and part of the end of the story is it happens after the war ends, and a lot of the like towards the end of the story and the epilogue deals with how is this character dealing with being away from what they've been doing their whole life, because it's a long war in the story.
Yeah.
And it's a balance of like, do I give this character PTSD? I feel like in some capacity I have to, but you can also, there can also be more positivity as in like dealing with it. I don't know.
Yeah.
The like long dark storm and then like into the like clearing of the clouds, and like,
Isn't that the tricky thing with writing, is that like you build up these characters and then you're like, oh, but what if I did this to them? And then you're like, no, because you stop yourself when you have that thought. You're like, oh, I can't do that.
I'm in the middle of that right now because the secondary protagonist
so
of the character, her name is Iris.
Yeah.
She's the best friend of Valor. The main character got the whole story essentially, and like, I've only ever envisioned her as that, as the good, like the shoulder to cry, the secondary character. But I've just been toying in my mind recently, like, what if she was a defector the whole time?
No.
What if I just flipped it? And I don't think I'm gonna,
Yeah.
but I know fucking exactly what you're talking,
Yeah.
because it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be like, what if this whole time she was the enemy? And it's like, I'm not going to write that, but I really want to.
Yeah, but like it's going to nag at you. It's going to nag at you so much.
When things like that happen, I write AUs, like alternate universes.
Oh, cool.
Like what if?
I like that.
That are secondary to the main like story branch, but it's like, what if this whole time Iris was a double agent, and she managed to keep her undercoverness throughout the whole thing, and she's the reason that a lot of the bad things happen to the characters, and then you get to the end of the story and the whole resolution is the Valor Iris like head to head.
Yeah.
That would be like a totally separate like story though.
That would be cool though.
So I've been totally grappling with that recently.
I did that with Dishes, where there's that.
I love Dishes. Dishes is so good.
We'll do that one on a different one. I think. But like there's that altercation in the flashback sequence where he finds, like, Joe finds out that like, mom passed away and didn't get told about it.
I haven't been told. Yeah.
And I remember writing, or like I was trying to think about, okay, what happens in his 30s, and I was like I was going for a walk, because sometimes like going for a walk is the perfect way to like get the creative ideas going.
Totally.
And I was like, what if I what if I
one
did
of those
that?
One of those
Like,
ideas. What was the idea?
It was basically that altercation where it's like, what if he just didn't know, like what if he wasn't told?
So what was in the story was one of those ideas.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because I think
it's more interesting.
what was the original?
There was
he
nothing.
knew?
There wasn't anything like concrete yet, but it was basically like I was just trying to find some way that the connection between the brothers could be pulled apart.
So strongly at odds with each other.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't have imagined that was an afterthought. That's crazy, because that feels so integral to the story. Sometimes you just like, what if I just do this? And then it's just like your story just goes whoop, and then it's like way better.
Pretty much. Honestly, with Strugglers, that was the thing where I'm like
with the name.
Yeah. You're right. But that was there was also an aspect where I wanted to pursue. There was something with Allie that I wanted to. That was it. I had a terrible first draft of that story where like Joan came in and she was like, I know you and whatever. And now he's like, what? How do you know me? And she's like, I know you. And then it's like, oh shit, she's going to fucking find me out. And it's like, it was like a whole weird thing where like Joan was like this, like basically just knew her from her past life or something like that. And I was like, what am I writing? This is not effective. And then that's the storyboard process, man.
But from the ashes came what you have now.
Yeah, just get shit on the page. Please,
absolutely.
Get shit on the page. Do you ever have that with music where you're just like, I feel like I need to write something, but I don't have anything concrete at the moment?
Yes, but I don't just get shit on the page.
Okay.
I just don't write. I cannot do that.
Yeah.
I can't. I cannot. We've talked about this on I think on the last one.
Yeah.
I can't bring myself to just write. There's got to be an idea. There has to be a spark. There has to be I'm writing about this character. I'm writing about this scene in the film, or the story.
Yeah.
I'm writing about this set of characters' emotions.
Sure.
Like I said, a lot of what I write about is my story. And no, I can't just start writing. Just get stuff down. I have to. And it works out because I have yet to like, I'll be honest, I've gone through some really long blocks.
Yeah.
I've done 6 months of like not really writing anything.
Damn.
And then I'm like, please something.
Yeah.
I gotta have more Skittles.
Last time I wrote something, April 19th, 2023.
What is your fucking problem?
To be honest, like, well, obviously,
yeah.
And then I write for work. It's not creative writing, but like I write every day in that like I write media releases, I write emails.
And then you don't want to write.
Yeah, I come home and the last thing I want to do is write.
Totally.
I think what's fantastic about the creative writing program at BU is that it forces me to write and therefore shows me that I can do it because I have to do it.
Yeah.
However, there has been stories that keep nagging at me that I want to write.
Yeah.
There's one that like I want to center around the 4 suits of cards and in like this like schoolhouse where like basically like when I grew up there's an old community schoolhouse that was like a 1-room classroom situation that is now used for like all the old folks and like from all the farms nearby just come together and play cards. And I want to write a story in that, like somewhere in there that centers around the 4 suits and like makes the 4 suits like the key structure points of the story.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, and
that's
I want to write it,
game.
but I gotta write it at some point. You know, like I can't just continue to be like, yeah, I'll get to it.
Yeah, right.
I gotta actually sit down and make time for it.
Holy fuck, I do that with my writing too.
Yeah.
I've got so many. I write down my like ideas in a big document. It's just like 1 page. It's like 1 line. It's like fucking. Well, the iris is the defector line is on there. So so I've got like so many of those, and I'm like, that's like 3 weeks of straight writing.
Yeah.
And I just keep adding on. The thing being though that you've got the reminder that the idea is there.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's always something you could explore.
Yeah, I made my own Discord server that I called the Life Picker Upper. And it was basically like there was a channel that was writing ideas. There is an idea that keeps nagging at me that I can't stop thinking about that I really want to do at some point. I just don't know what form it's going to take. If it's a poem, even though I don't do poems, but I feel like it would really lend well to a poem structure.
I do lots of poetry. But
it's basically like the overwhelming sadness of finally filling in the last corner of the map.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I want to like pursue that from like a cartographer, but then also like a star charter, and then also like a deep sea map, like basically like there's that feeling of like, oh fuck, when I fill this in,
that's it.
We've explored, we've done it, and I'm like, there's something really really existential about that. I'm like, no, the map is done. I don't like. There was such a rush to want to find everything that I didn't stop to.
Now that I'm here,
yeah. So I want to create a story around that.
That's
I just
cool.
Can't find it.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So anyway, Dan.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic.
This has been great.
I genuinely love. It's basically like coffee talks. Like whenever you and I go for coffee and we're just like, let's just chat about this for a while.
Yes, sir.
They're my favorite kind of conversations.
But we get to show each other cool things in these ones.
Yeah, so. I like it.
And you all get to listen at home too.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed. Actually, please let us know if you did, and if you didn't,
don't say anything.
You know what?
Don't even. Just it's fine. Just shush.
Just click the like button real quick.
Turn the
we need
bell on.
1 subscriber to get to 60. So
hell yeah,
do that. And, yeah.
We're gonna outpace subscribers to videos at some point.
Yes, we will. Yes,
we're gonna have more videos than. That's so funny.
Yeah,
I almost want that to happen.
I think it will happen very soon.
Funny.
We just stop making videos until we get another subscriber. So quick thank yous, Daniel. Thank you for creating dope music as we've listened to.
You got it, man.
And for editing our podcast.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate that. Creation Nation Makerspace is downtown in Brandon, Manitoba.
Whoa.
And you can check it out today.
Whoa. Or tomorrow.
Whoa.
Not yesterday.
Or today.
You missed it. Okay. Time is not cyclical. It only goes forward.
We're always running out of time.
Well, we have infinite time, actually.
No.
Well, we don't. But.
Finally, thank you to the listeners for showing up once again for this somewhat longer episode, but at the same time, just watch it in chunks. You don't have to watch it all at once.
Yeah, if you're still listening, you're Giga Chad.
You're awesome. Thank you. We appreciate it a lot.
Like the Chad meme?
Yeah.
And that's anyone listening right now.
Exactly. We're going to head out of here, but thank you again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for another brand spanking new episode of the Junk Monkeys podcast.
Oh, goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Yeah, see you later.
Cheers, go.
Oh, cheers, go. Pull the lever, Kronk.
That's so
what the fuck? Yeah, she's falling.
What's